Abraham Lincoln said, "I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. If the end brings me out all right, what is said against me won't amount to anything. If the end brings me out wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference."
President Richard M. Nixon in April of 1974 giving his third presidential address on what history remembers as the Watergate scandal. Of course, in August of 1974, Mr. Nixon resigned the presidency. Welcome back to America's Forum. I am very pleased to have here at our anchor desk Michael Reagan. And you know, scandals have been a part of American politics as long as there has been American politics. Within the current administration, a whole lot of things are going on that the dominant media culture refuses to cover. But the question remains, what can we do to try to make our government more above board, more honest, more transparent? And there's a political dimension on the right concerning this, Michael, that we have to take into account. As a matter of fact, we're going to call in from Newsmax Washington a man who covers corruption, writes about it in the Weekly Standard. He is Jay Cost. Jay is the author of the new book, A Republic No More, Big Government and the Rise of American Political Corruption. Jay, we heard Mr. Nixon there in 1974, talking about Lincoln dealing with criticism. There is some criticism in the here and now about a division between the Washington establishment, the conservative establishment, and the Tea Party / grassroots. Is there a danger the Republican Party will start to ignore the grassroots because of the corporatist voice in Washington, D.C.?
I think there is a great danger, in fact, and I think you already are seeing examples of it play out in this new Congress. I think one of the best examples of that problem is the fight against the Export-Import Bank, which a lot of people on the left and the right sort of view as the ultimate example of corporate welfare or cronyism or whatever you want to call it, and yet interests within the Republican Party are looking set to thwart the Tea Party attempts to get rid of that program.
Michael Reagan, your dad was famous for bringing in a lot of different people to deal with problems. When he took a look at the size of government, he brought in a leading industrialist, Mr. Grace, for the Grace Commission report.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I understand what Peter's saying, but let's be honest here. There's always been a divide between the Rockefeller Republicans, that's what we used to call them, and the Reagan Republicans, which is the grassroots Republicans. Grassroots elected Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, you make an argument today that Ronald Reagan was the first member of the Tea Party in his day, in his era. I think what's happened in America is money. I think Congress, who passed all these laws having to do with elections and the amount of money, has caused the corruption to happen because now there is so much money in Washington, in elections, that has become so corrupt.
Well, let's turn now to Jay Cost, and literally, Jay, the cost of politics. Mr. Justice Brandeis said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Is there a way to quantify and make transparent all donations, the complete financial end of politics, or will we always see loopholes in the regulations that politicians and government agencies formulate?
Well, it's enormously difficult because you're basically asking Congress to reform itself. And Congress never wants to reform itself. It's always been difficult to move that wheel, and I think a great example of that is President Reagan's necessary leadership on tax reform in 1986, which is one of the brighter spots in the fight against corruption I talk about in my book. Congress did not want to clean up the tax code. It takes strong presidential leadership to make that happen, to force Congress to fight back the special interests that otherwise dominated.
Well, mindful of that and the imprimatur of executive input and leadership, There's been a curious situation in Washington, Jay, with this administration. I mean, take your pick, IRS, VA, Benghazi. We just had a situation where yesterday, ironically, my old political attorney, Cleta Mitchell, was on this program saying the White House refuses to release evidence about the IRS scandal and targeting conservatives, and there is nary a peep out of the establishment media. Is Mr. Obama getting a free pass in terms of political corruption?
I think he does. I think that the Obama administration's MO is to do as little for the sake of good, clean government as it's required to do. And seeing as how the mainstream media overwhelmingly is supportive of the liberal democratic agenda, they don't ask him to do very much. So we get almost nothing out of this president.
If I bring it up, I mean, Mona Charen wrote an article years ago, and I quote it all the time. Television announces the importance of something. And so if people turn on the ABCs, the NBCs, the CBSs, where most people still get their news, and they don't announce these things are going on, then to the American people it's not important. Richard Nixon was important to America because NBC, ABC, and CBS were the only three networks. They were covering it. But none of the networks have covered the IRS scandal and all the other stuff going on. And until America wakes up and says, wait a minute, this is important, nothing's going to change.
And with 90 seconds remaining, we point out we're not the media, we're Newsmax. But Jay Cost, just a little more on your new book. Give us the lowdown here in about the 45 seconds that remain.
Great. Well, the book tries to look at political corruption through the sweep of American history, and it argues that corruption is almost a kind of institution that's become embedded into the way of doing business. And I ultimately trace the cause back to the growth of the power, size, and scope of government beyond what the Constitution originally outlined.
It's the real cost of corruption made clear in voluminous yet entertaining fashion by Jay Cost. The name of the book again, A Republic No More, Big Government and the Rise of American Political Corruption. Jay Cost, we thank you for your time checking in from Washington, D.C. Michael Reagan, it is so great to have you here on the anchor desk. Come back again real soon, okay?
Love to. Thank you.
When we come back, more about political marketing, the conspicuous disappearance of the Democrat frontrunner. What is Hillary Clinton up to? Might she be, dare we say it, rebranding? We'll talk with Mark Rudolph about political marketing and political branding right after this Newsmax Now update.